Okay. So you know how we're always trying to figure out like what makes certain people so successful
Uh-huh.
and like crazy successful?
Yeah.
Well, today we're going to look into this wild idea.
Okay.
Can you like actually rewire your brain to think like a billionaire?
Ooh.
Right. Pretty interesting, huh?
Yeah.
So we know you guys don't want us to waste your time with a bunch of fluff.
Right.
We're going to cut to the chase. Unpack this whole billionaire mindset concept
Yeah.
and see if there's any real substance to it.
Exactly. Dive deep.
Deep dive.
I love it.
All right, so...
You know what's interesting is we've got some really cool material for this one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that explores this idea that, like, our thought patterns really make a big difference in, like, how well we do financially and whether we can, like, actually change those patterns.
I can see how that'd be true.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, like, how do we even know where to start?
Well, that's what we're going to try to figure out. We're going to move past the catchy sayings and really get into, like, the nuts and bolts of this whole mental reprogramming thing.
Okay, so like a software update for our brains.
Exactly. And the sources we've got, they make a really interesting comparison between our brains and, like, the tech we use all the time, like computers.
Oh, yeah, okay.
You know how we're always updating our phones and laptops?
Always the latest software.
But can we upgrade our minds the same way? That's the question.
It's like they're saying our beliefs and thought processes are like mental software.
Right. And they highlight how these, like, deep-seated ways of thinking can actually hold us back.
Like outdated software.
Exactly. Just like outdated software limits what our devices can do.
Right.
Our old ways of thinking can limit our potential.
Wow, okay.
And they even talk about, like, our fundamental brain settings, you know, those shaped by our childhood and experiences, like the factory settings on a computer.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's pretty wild.
So are they saying we can, like, reset to factory settings in our brains?
It's not quite that simple, but it's definitely thought-provoking.
All right, so we've all got this incredible processing power.
Absolutely.
But it's all about how we use it right.
Exactly.
I mean, think about how much time we waste on negative thoughts.
Oh, yeah.
Those are like system crashes, man.
That's a great analogy.
Thanks.
They actually talk about that in the material. They say negative thought cycles can really sabotage our progress.
Totally. Like a bug in the system. Okay, so let's get into this billionaire mindset thing.
Yeah, let's break it down.
What exactly are they talking about?
One of the most interesting things the material points out is that the key difference between super wealthy people and everyone else isn't necessarily about, like, how smart they are or their education.
Interesting.
It's more about how they process information, their mental operating system.
Oh, okay. So they're running a different program.
Exactly.
So what makes their program different?
Well, the sources point to 4 key areas where their thinking patterns really stand out.
Okay, I'm ready. Hit me.
The first is how they see opportunity.
Opportunity?
Yeah, they have this uncanny ability to spot opportunities where others just see obstacles.
So like 2 people are looking at the same situation.
Exactly.
One sees a dead end.
Right.
The other one, with this opportunity recognition, sees a potential gold mine.
Exactly. They're able to frame the situation differently and see the potential solutions or even new paths that can come out of that very challenge.
Wow. It's like they're wired to see possibility.
It's pretty fascinating.
All right, so that's opportunity. What's the second pattern?
Risk. How they deal with risk.
Okay, so these billionaires aren't just throwing caution to the wind, right?
No, not at all. The sources emphasize that they're not reckless. In fact, their risk evaluation is way more sophisticated.
Wow.
They weigh the potential gains and losses really carefully.
So it's a calculated risk.
Exactly. More calculated than most. It's not driven by fear of failure like it is for many people.
Interesting. So it's not that they're not afraid to fail.
Right.
They just have a better system for assessing risk.
Exactly. It's more nuanced and strategic.
Okay, that makes sense.
It
What's the third pattern?
This one really jumped out at me. It's their focus on creating value.
Okay, value creation.
Yes. The material highlights this as like a fundamental difference.
Yeah.
People with this billionaire mindset, they're constantly thinking about how to create something new, something valuable for others.
So it's not just about making money for themselves.
No, it's bigger than that. They're contributing something meaningful to the world.
It's like, how can I make this better? How can I offer something of worth?
You got it. It's a much more proactive and generative approach.
Wow. Okay. That's pretty inspiring, actually.
It is.
All right, what's the fourth pattern?
This one's super important, especially in today's world.
Okay, lay it on me.
It's their ability to think long-term.
Long term, like way out into the future.
Exactly. while so many of us are caught up in instant gratification.
Yeah, for sure.
They're making decisions based on what the implications will be years or even decades down the line.
That's incredible.
It is. This long-term vision helps them stay focused on their goals and bounce back from setbacks.
So they're playing the long game.
Exactly.
Okay, so here's the thing that's blowing my mind right now.
That's that.
All of these patterns,
Yeah.
they're not something you're born with.
That's the amazing part.
These sources are saying they're learned behaviors.
Right.
Which means we can actually learn them too.
Absolutely. That's the whole point of this reprogramming idea.
Okay, so how do we actually do that? Like, how do we rewrite our mental software?
Well, the science behind it is something called neuroplasticity.
Neuroplasticity.
Yeah, it's basically the brain's ability to change and reorganize itself.
Okay, hold on. Our brains can actually change.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Our brains are constantly forming new connections throughout our lives.
So like every time we learn something new or change how we think,
Yep.
our brain actually physically adapts.
Exactly. It's constantly rewiring itself.
Wow. Okay, I'm starting to see how this is possible.
It's pretty mind-blowing stuff.
So if our brains are this adaptable,
Right.
how do we intentionally install these new wealth-generating thought patterns?
Well, the sources outline a few specific methods.
Give them to me.
One of the most important is conscious thought replacement.
Conscious thought replacement. What's that?
It means becoming aware of those limiting beliefs we have.
Oh, like the negative self-talk.
Exactly. And then actively challenging those thoughts and replacing them with positive ones.
So it's about catching yourself when you're being negative
Right.
and consciously choosing a more empowering thought.
Precisely. It takes effort and consistency, but it's
Yeah.
crucial.
Yeah, that makes sense. What else?
Environmental reprogramming is another big one.
Environmental, like our surroundings.
Exactly. It's about intentionally surrounding yourself with people and information that support the mindset you want to develop.
So like spending time with successful people,
Yeah.
reading books about wealth creation,
Exactly.
instead of hanging out with negative people and watching reality TV all day.
That's the idea. Your environment can either lift you up or hold you back.
That's powerful. Okay, what else?
The third method is called neural pathway strengthening.
Neural pathways, like the connections in our brains.
You got it. The more you practice a new way of thinking or behaving,
Yeah.
the stronger those neural pathways become.
So like the more we think positive thoughts,
Right.
the easier it becomes to think that way automatically.
Exactly. It's like learning a new language. The more you use it, the more fluent you get.
Repetition is key.
Repetition is key.
Okay, and what's the last method?
Emotional state management.
Emotional state management.
Yeah, this is about learning to control your emotions
Okay,
and operate from a place of confidence and abundance
I like that.
rather than fear or scarcity.
So like not letting your emotions dictate your actions.
Exactly.
This is where things get really interesting.
I know,
Because
right?
our sources actually talk about specific programs like Billionaire Brain Wave.
Yeah, those systems that claim to help you upgrade your wealth mindset.
Right, like those software upgrades we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. They aim to provide a structured framework for mental reprogramming.
So they're trying to fast track the process of adopting these billionaire thinking patterns.
Exactly.
Okay, so what kind of techniques do these billionaire brainwave systems use?
Well, a lot of them use guided visualization.
Guided visualization. What's that?
It's where you imagine yourself achieving your financial goals, really vividly and emotionally connect with that vision.
So it's like creating a mental movie of your success.
Exactly. And by repeatedly visualizing it,
Yeah,
you start to believe it's possible.
that sounds pretty powerful.
It can be. Then there are affirmation protocols.
Affirmations, like repeating positive statements.
Exactly. By saying these affirmations out loud,
Yeah.
you're basically reprogramming your subconscious mind.
Interesting. So you're telling yourself you're wealthy and successful.
Right. And over time, your beliefs start to align with those statements.
Okay.
A lot of these programs also use frequency optimization.
Frequency optimization.
Yeah, like binaural beats. Have you heard of those?
I've heard of them, but I don't really understand how they work.
It's kind of cool. You listen to slightly different sound frequencies in each ear, and your brain processes it as a single tone.
Okay.
And this supposedly influences your brainwave activity,
Got it.
helping you reach specific mental states like focus or relaxation.
So it's like sound waves that hack your brain.
In a way, yeah. It's pretty interesting.
That's wild. All right, what's the last technique?
This one's pretty out there.
Hit me.
It's called subconscious restructuring.
Subconscious restructuring. Sounds intense.
It is. It's about working below the level of conscious awareness.
Ooh.
To identify and change deep-seated beliefs and patterns.
So like things that are holding us back without us even realizing it.
Exactly.
What?
It can involve things like subliminal messaging or hypnotherapy.
So it's like reprogramming the operating system without even opening the program.
You got it.
That's some next level stuff.
It is.
Okay, so the sources are basically presenting all of this.
Yeah.
Like software updates for our brains.
Right. You install this new mental code, and suddenly you're performing at a whole new level.
Right. But is it really that simple? Can you really just download a billionaire mindset?
That's the million-dollar question.
Literally.
Uh-huh.
But seriously, what does the science say about all of this?
Well, the sources do reference a lot of scientific research, like in the field of cognitive psychology.
Cognitive psychology.
Yeah. It's the study of how we think and learn.
Okay.
And there's lots of evidence that shows how we can consciously change our thought patterns.
So it's not just some woo-woo self-help stuff.
No, it's grounded in science.
Yeah.
And of course, there's neuroplasticity.
Right. The brain's ability to change.
Exactly. That's the biological foundation for all of this.
So our brains are actually capable of rewiring themselves.
They are. And the material also mentions behavioral economics.
Okay.
Which studies how our mental biases affect our financial decisions.
Yeah. I can see how that would be relevant.
It helps explain why we sometimes make irrational choices with money.
Right. Even when we know better.
Exactly.
Okay, so the science seems to back up the idea that this kind of mental shift is possible.
Right.
But the sources also make it clear that it's not a guarantee. There are some things that make it more likely to work.
Absolutely. Consistency is key. Just like learning any new skill.
Right. Practice makes perfect.
Exactly. You need to consistently reinforce these new thought patterns.
Okay.
If you just do it once or twice, it's not going to stick.
Makes sense.
Another important factor is emotional engagement.
Emotional engagement. Like you have to really feel it.
Exactly. The more emotionally connected you are to the changes you want to make, the more impactful they'll be.
I can see that.
It's like if you're just going through the motions, it's not going to have the same effect.
Okay, what else?
Practical application is crucial.
So you can't just think about it.
Right.
You have to actually put these new thoughts into action.
Exactly. Test them out in real-life situations.
Okay.
Make financial decisions based on these new mental models.
Got it. And what's the last factor?
Individualization.
Individualization.
Yeah. What works for one person might not work for another.
Okay.
We all have different brains, different learning styles.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Exactly. You might need to tweak things.
Right.
Find what works best for you.
Okay, this is a good segue into something else the sources talk about.
What's that?
The difference between installation and integration.
Right.
Because changing your mindset isn't like downloading a new app.
It's so much more than that.
Right. You can't just install a new thought pattern and expect it to work perfectly right away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It takes time to integrate these new ways of thinking into your life.
So it's more like learning a new skill than like a quick software update.
Right. The sources actually use the term integration time.
Integration time.
Yeah. You need to test out these new thoughts in the real world, see how they work for you, make adjustments along the way.
So it's a process.
It is.
Okay, so what are some of the key elements of this integration phase?
Well, the sources talk about immersion periods.
Immersion, like fully immersing yourself in these new thoughts.
Exactly. You need to dedicate time and energy to really cultivating them.
Okay, so like setting aside time each day to practice thinking this way.
Yeah.
Okay, what else?
Real-world testing.
You talked about that, putting it into practice.
Right. And then adaptive refinement.
So you're constantly tweaking and adjusting based on your experiences.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then finally, community reinforcement.
Ah, community. So being around other people who are on the same path.
Exactly. It's incredibly helpful to have a supportive network where these new ways of thinking are encouraged and celebrated.
I can see how that would make a big difference.
It does.
Okay. So after exploring all of this, we have to come back to the big question.
The big one.
Can you really download a billionaire mindset?
Right.
What's the final verdict?
Well, the sources don't give a simple yes or no answer.
I figured.
They emphasize that you can't just instantly absorb someone else's mindset.
Okay.
But you can definitely learn the principles and thought patterns that contribute to wealth creation.
Okay.
And you can systematically integrate those into your own thinking.
So it's less about downloading and more about rewiring.
Exactly. It's like learning any complex skill. It takes time, effort, practice.
Right. But the science suggests it is possible.
It does. Neuroplasticity shows us that our brains are capable of incredible change.
That's amazing.
It is.
Okay, so to sum it all up, the idea of a quick download is a bit of a simplification.
Yeah, it's a catchy phrase.
But developing a billionaire mindset is really about a conscious and ongoing process of mental upgrading.
I love that. Mental upgrading. That's perfect.
And the sources make a great point.
What's that?
Just like we wouldn't expect outdated technology to work well in today's world,
yeah,
we can't expect outdated thinking to lead to extraordinary results.
So true.
So whether you try out one of those structured programs,
right,
or you create your own personalized approach, investing in upgrading your mind is one of the most valuable things you can do.
Couldn't agree more.
And at the end of the day, it's all about taking control of your own mental landscape.
It is, shaping your own thoughts and beliefs.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
I
want you to think about something.
All right, I'm ready.
What are some of the thought patterns you have around things like opportunity, risk, value, and the future?
Ooh, good question.
Yeah, and what's one small step you can take today to start upgrading your thinking in one of those areas?
It's a challenge, but it's a good one.
It is. Because remember, this is a journey.
Absolutely.
And the potential for transformation is huge.
It is.
So keep learning, keep growing.
Right.
And keep pushing those boundaries.
I love it.
All right. That's it for this deep dive.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
We'll catch you next time.